Welcome to session 14 of Marketing Step by Step, your conversion story. Your story is one of your most valuable business assets. Customers need a way to connect to you and your business, and your story provides it. The more your story involves elements that your customer has experienced, the better. Your story is an asset, so refine it. Take care of it. Develop it. Humans understand experiences and information in relationship to stories. It seems that in order to understand something, we must relate it to other things in a format called story. This allows us to see how elements are related to each other and to the whole. Minds think and process in story form. When we don't have a story provided, we create one. We've already learned about the phenomenon called confabulation, right? Where we just make up stories about why we have ideas, why we made decisions, why we're doing things. We seem to always be looking for how elements fit together and trying to create a story that makes sense. I've talked to several friends and experts about this process of storying and why we story and how we do it. If you've been to any of Werner Erhardt's trainings or Landmark training, you know that they have a whole thing they do in their program where they basically show you that there's a distinction between what happens in the world and the stories that we make up to explain them. And once you understand this distinction, that the story that you're making up is not actually what happened, it's just your story about it, it can create a pretty big awakening. I've had a lot of discussions with my girlfriend about this, and she was telling me about a model that I believe Daniel Dennett uses, where he says, the way the mind works is it's kind of like a wall, and you're on one side of the wall, and everything else is going on the other side of the wall. And every once in a while, something gets thrown over the wall for you to take a look at. And as the elements come over the wall in the form of thoughts, experiences, communication from other people, and so forth, what we do is we weave a story together. We essentially improvise a story that makes them all make sense. Now, this is quite a feat when you think about it, because there's always new information coming, and sometimes we have to recontextualize everything that happened before in light of the new information. This is particularly challenging with human beings and with businesses, because we would like to believe that people are either good or bad, or that businesses are either good or bad, and that they always behave in either a good way or a bad way. And we like to be able to characterize people as angels or demons or heroes or villains. And we could go on and on about this one. I'm sure you could see this rabbit hole goes very deep. But the point is, we're constantly rewriting our stories in order to make things make sense. So we make the world make sense. We make new information make sense in relationship to the story that we create about it. Now, it also turns out that we humans are fascinated with the background of things. We like to know where things came from. We like to understand how things came to be. This is the story of research. It's the story of science. It's the story of archaeology. It's the story of history, researchers, okay, looking at what's happened, trying to piece the whole story together. And again, when we don't have a story provided, we create one. The mind fills in the missing gaps. So what I recommend is that you consciously pay attention to developing, creating your story, telling your story in a way that customers can understand, that's attractive to them, that allows them to relate to you, allows them to relate to your business. So your story should allow your customer to relate to you. The more people have in common, the more they feel like they can relate to each other. In order for your story to help your customer relate to you, it must include elements that they have experienced personally. Something very special happens when we feel that we have so much in common with someone else that we feel related to them. Okay? It triggers this feeling of we're the same. You're just like me. So your story should allow your customer to relate to you. Remember when we talked about the customer avatar and speaking to all of those elements that your customers all have in common? You're talking to a particular kind of strange human that only has these traits, doesn't have all the other traits, and you're only talking to those traits. This way everyone can feel like you're talking just to them. Well, the story is just another extension of that. We want to tell stories that every piece of the story the customer can relate to. Your story should touch on key emotional experiences. Key emotional experiences. There are elements of stories that are most touching to people. Being at a disadvantage, trying and failing, psychological or emotional drama, discovering winning formulas, achieving success when the chips were down. These are all very, very interesting elements that most people can relate to, and they make for excellent elements of your conversion story. Okay, so your story should touch on these key elements, okay, these common elements. At the beginning, it's important that you tell the story of you or someone that started out in the same situation as the customer is in now. Okay, they didn't start out in a different situation and then got there. They started out in the same situation that your customer, your prospective customer, is in right now. Then they tried and they failed. Okay, they tried some type of solution. They tried and they failed. Most of us have tried many things and failed at them, saw that they didn't work. Next, through the process of trying and failing, they had a breakthrough and they discovered the secret to success. Then there was a product or a system that was created that solved this problem. Then others used it and succeeded. Okay? Ideally, you created this system, you had the breakthrough, you created the product, you gave it to others, and then they used it and they started having consistent success. And then now you can succeed, meaning the prospect or the customer. So, for example, let's say that I was teaching someone how to lose 20 pounds of belly fat, and I was teaching them how to lose that weight in 90 days. Okay? If I wanted to create a compelling conversion story, I wouldn't say, I started out as a champion athlete and I was in excellent shape, and I've been in excellent shape all my life, and then I had an accident and I was unconscious in a coma, and when I woke up I had 20 pounds of belly fat, and then I tried to lose it, and then I discovered a way to lose it. Now I've created a system, and now I'm an Olympic athlete again, and you can use my system to lose weight. Because there's something about that just feels like, wait, that didn't start out where I'm at. I'm not an Olympic athlete. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. Now, if that's actually your story, there's a way you could present it so that your customer could relate to it. But much better to start out saying, I woke up one day and I had 20 pounds of belly fat around my waist. And for the life of me, I don't know where it came from. It just didn't make sense. Somehow it got there, but it was stubborn. I tried all kinds of diets. I tried this one. I tried that one. I tried starving myself. I tried exercising all the time, and I just couldn't lose my belly fat. Then I was talking to a friend, and they shared a tip that had worked for someone that they knew, and I thought, well, what the heck? Let me try it. And I couldn't believe it. I started losing a pound a week. And then I made some tweaks to the system, and I started losing 2 pounds a week. And 90 days later, I had lost all of my belly fat. I took this secret that I discovered and I turned it into a system. And I created this training program now that anyone can use. I started giving it out to my friends and people around me. They used it and they succeeded. And now I'd like to share it with you so that you can succeed. Now, that was obviously rough. It was a little bit sloppy because I was making it up as I was looking at this formula here. But the point is, each of these elements is something that others can relate to. Okay, it's something that your customer would be able to relate to, see themselves in the shoes. It would be something where they would go, now that doesn't sound too intimidating. It also raises curiosity. Okay, it also makes you say, wow, I want to know what it is that they figured out. Now, let me give you one that might be a little bit more polished. Okay, this is what I would say if someone asked me to tell my story of getting my dating life handled. Or it's something that I might say in a marketing video if I was selling dating advice. I would start off and say, I can remember the time in my life where I would look across the room at an attractive woman, and I couldn't go over and start a conversation even if she was smiling and waving at me. I felt deathly afraid. At one point, I got so frustrated, I decided to do something about it. So I went out and I started reading books, going to seminars, taking different types of training courses, learning everything I could about dating and relationships. Well, each of the things that I learned, they just didn't work very well. And I still was horrified whenever I saw a woman that I would like to start a conversation with. Then I met a couple of guys and I started spending time with them. These guys were what I call naturals. They were naturally good at approaching women and getting dates. And I started watching what they did. And I noticed that they were doing something that I would not have thought of in a million years. It was completely counterintuitive, the opposite of what I would have done. And in fact, they could walk over and start a conversation with a woman and walk away with her phone number, and many times even walk away with a date with her right on the spot in just a few minutes. So I started trying what I learned, and lo and behold, I started being able to get a woman's phone number within a few minutes of meeting her. After having a lot of success myself, I had my friends ask me about it, so I took all of my ideas, I put them together, and I started teaching others, and they started getting lots of dates consistently. I took all of the knowledge that I learned, I wrote a book. I've created this book. Now you can download it online. You can use it to succeed. You can use it to overcome your fear, approach women, and get dates literally in any situation. Now, do you see here how this story starts out in the position that my prospect is in, and it evolves into the position that they want to be in, and then it goes even further. It also incorporates the real world, okay, me trying and failing, which almost all of us have done, whatever we're doing, whether we're creating a product, a service, a training. And then we had our breakthrough, and that's really interesting to the prospective customer. They want to know what that is. It also creates a lot of curiosity. It becomes kind of secret information if you don't share it, and it can be a real lever for making sales. Then, of course, talking about how you've had others that have used it and had success. You created a system that's tested now, and now you'd like to help others succeed. It all makes sense. It all presents a background that makes someone want to buy your product, makes someone relate to you, and ultimately creates a lot of motivation for them to do so. So let's do an exercise and actually write your conversion story. Okay, you should be looking at an exercise that says your credibility and conversion story. The human mind tends to think in stories. Pure information without stories, examples, and application tends to roll off and not stick. Importantly, when you begin to tell a story, the person listening goes into open relaxation mode, their defenses come down, and they begin picturing what you're telling them. Your story is an excellent way to build credibility and trust with your prospect, which are both critical to persuading them to take action and buy what you're selling. When creating your story, incorporate elements that your prospect can relate to directly. The more your story matches the reality, experience, and world of your prospect, the more impact it will have. Use this formula when creating your credibility and conversion story. Okay, so we begin with your starting situation, where you were when you first started, that your prospect has in common with you. If it's not you, tell the story about someone else that you've helped. Next, tried and failed. Tell a vivid, emotional story of trying and failing. Next is your breakthrough, how you discovered the secret to success. In the real world, this usually happens kind of randomly, and it's very interesting. Next, you created a system. You turned it into a method or a product, something that others can use. Next, others did it too. Others used your product, your system, your service, and they got consistent results. In other words, now it's proven, now it's tested, now it's refined. And then finally, you can succeed. You can do it too. Now I want you to have this success. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take this framework here and write out your story, and then add color and detail to fill it out. So below, we're gonna make an outline or a framework. Okay, so right at the bottom of this exercise, write out the framework for your story here, then add color and detail to fill it out later. All you want to do here is write the 6-part outline of your story, and then you want to go and actually kind of word process and write out your entire story, script it so that you can tell it when you're in person, in advertisements, in videos, and you can start using it everywhere. One of the first things you should do when you first meet new prospects is tell them your story so that they can connect to you on the personal level, they can relate to you as a human being. This will increase the impact of everything. And also, you want to start using your story in all of your marketing, all of your conversion pieces, because again, it relaxes the defenses, allows the person to start to connect with you and trust you, builds credibility, builds influenceability, if that's a word that I can make up. So create the outline of your credibility and conversion story now, and then add color and detail later to fill it out. Start using it everywhere when you meet prospects and in your marketing. And I will see you in the next session of Marketing Step by Step.